Morning. I'm with Simon Dyakowski. Simon had a news release on Tuesday morning about the Alwin Mine Project in BC. And actually, I have a long history with Alwin, going back, I think, to about 2020. And what's interesting about the Alwin deposit is that it's adjacent to Teck's Highland Valley Copper Mine, a massive porphyry complex. I think it's the largest open pit mine in Canada. And Simon has been advancing the Alwin project for the last several years. And yesterday, a news release showed some very interesting new revelations. So we're going to dig into it with Simon. Simon, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Robert. I'm great. Thank you for having me on today. We're advancing this project in a new way now, and it comes with a backdrop that's I think quite a bit different in the Highland Valley Copper Camp than has been over the past several years, and that is really driven by not us but by our neighbor who surrounds us on all sides. So we're in this Highland Valley Copper Camp. The claims that we own, the Alwin and now the Mer, we own 100% of both claim groups, sit entirely within Teck Resources Highland Valley claim group. So I guess it's an enclave within Highland Valley Copper. And for, ever since we got involved with GSP in the project in 2020, Teck has been in this permitting process to obtain a license to extend the mine life of Highland Valley Copper. And that was one of the first reasons that I was really drawn to Alwin was there's a very obvious growth of the Valley pit, which is the largest of Teck's open pits in that complex, westward toward to what is now our property. And I was very surprised that it took almost a decade for Teck to get this permitted, but lo and behold, it happened. And in late June, I believe, of this year, the government of British Columbia gave them their mine life extension permit. And then about 2 weeks ago, Teck announced a construction decision to proceed with expanding the mine and extending the mine life to the tune of $2.1 to $2.4 billion. So that's like a major new mine capex, but that's what they're spending on Highland Valley. And a lot of that money is being spent on an expansion toward us. So I think it's very encouraging. Obviously, it would have been the complete opposite had they been rejected, but let's not even think about that. But they finally got their expansion permit. So, when you have a major mining company that's now authorized and their board has decided to move forward with a very major expansion of this prolific mine, we're in a really good neighborhood. So I think it makes everything that we've done to date over the past 5 and a bit years all the more interesting. And we've got some new information now on a brand new target that we announced yesterday. So we're very excited with everything that's going on around us. The copper price is obviously moving in the right direction, and now I guess it's new Teck without the coal business has Highland Valley Copper listed as their flagship asset, which I just thought that was really interesting. If you had looked at Teck's website a year ago, Highland Valley Copper was not listed number one. And now it is. So it's great news for, I think, everybody in that part of BC that's looking for more mineral. And there's been a couple of bigger deals coming together around us, and hopefully GSP gets more attention now because we think we have a really interesting project. And just as a quick aside, I'm kind of going on my intro a little long here, but I got a very cool phone call yesterday from somebody that was involved in accounting. So he was, I think, like the controller or the CFO of the Alwin Mining Company back in the 1960s. And this guy is still around, and he lives in Richmond, BC, and he calls me all the time and gives me little tidbits of what was going on at Alwin in the 60s and beyond. And yesterday he reminded me that the Alwin mine, there's a showing there near surface called the Ashcroft Glory Hole, and that was the first copper that was found in the Highland Valley back around 1910. So he just wanted to remind me that the first copper ever found was high grade copper at surface, and they basically packed it out on horseback down to Ashcroft and shipped it out from there. And these guys developed the underground mine that we now control, the Alwin mine, in the 60s, and they've been he's been involved in the area for a long time. So it's kind of cool how people still remember that this is really the center of copper in Highland Valley is the Alwin, even though it's probably the smallest property there right now.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a cool tidbit from the 1960s. A lot to unpack there. But the Alwin mine, which if you look at the map from yesterday's news, you can see it there inside the pink property shell. There's a pit shell in black. There's a lot of holes that have been drilled there. And you can see there's an inferred resource, 1.46 million tons at 1.08% copper average grade. So the first thing that some investors might think when they see that, well, 1.46 million tons is small. Okay, yes, it is. It is on the smaller side, but it's averaging over 1% copper grade. Also at Alwin, you have some gold, you have some silver as well. And also, I don't think that resource has been updated in the last couple of years. So it's probably a bit larger than that. And also, the location. So you're right next to Teck's Highland Valley. And as you said, it's their #1 project in their portfolio right now. So you're literally prime location right next to the largest open pit copper mine in Canada. So that makes it all the more, intriguing, and it makes it a lot more understandable why you've been focused on this for the past several years. So let's dig into what work the company has carried out over the last couple of years that brings you to this moment where you say, hold on, we've potentially identified this deeper potential porphyry source.
Yeah, so just maybe a quick summary of what we've done to date. So we've done our own drilling at the Alwin deposit, which we put a maiden 43-101 on last year. And you're correct, it doesn't have all of the recent drilling data in it. And you correctly identified that it is solely based off the copper number. And there is a very significant gold and silver component to this system as well. But when the bulk of the drilling was being completed in the 60s, the price of gold and silver were such that no one cared about gold and silver. It was all about copper back in the day. And so of the 3,000 historic samples that we were able to find records of, there were 3,000 copper samples rather, and there were only 30 gold and silver samples assayed. So we think there's significant upside on the shallow, what's now an open pitable resource, just by including the gold and silver. And there are also extensions, we believe, at depth and along strike. Now, one obvious problem I think that investors should recognize, and probably do, the small tonnage isn't driven necessarily by the small size of the deposit. It's also, or perhaps primarily, driven by the location of the deposit in the very, very corner of the property. So we actually had to clip the pit wall of the resource model to account for the property boundary. So that's a challenge, but perhaps an opportunity, because obviously somebody else owns title to the claims to the south of us and to the east of us, and that's a very large mining company. Now, seeing if they're interested in getting involved or not is a different story, but that is a fact that there should be extensions to this mineralization. The entire grid of drilling is cut off at the south and the east corner. We think it's bigger. You can basically see that it is bigger in our model, but we had to clip it because we don't own that land. We couldn't dig a pit there if we wanted to. So we think, there's significant exploration upside just in the Alwin deposit proper. But there has been speculation and, valid speculation from geologists that have inspected the property over the years that, what is this epithermal or mesothermal vein system associated with? Is it a deeper porphyry source? Now, obviously it is, but which one is it? Is it displaced from one of the large porphyries to our east, or is it coming from another one, perhaps from a different direction? There's faulting going north, south, and east, west. So we don't know. And the property had a bit of an information gap, let's call it, on it, in terms of geophysical data. So the only property-wide survey that had been done in modern times was about 20 years ago. And it was a 3D IP survey, but they were looking with that survey to identify shallow chargeability anomalies to extend the shallow high-grade mineralization. So it was solely focused on that. You know, we have the data, we verified that it's really useless below 200 meters. And so we thought, okay, well, this is clearly, you know, unexplored below 200 meters. So why don't we do an NS natural source AMT survey over the entire property? So that's what we did in June and July, and we just got the preliminary data from. We also did some vector IP, a little bit more experimental. We don't have the data for that yet, and we don't know if it will be valid, but we might have a good IP model coming from that over the coming weeks. We're not sure yet. But what the AMT survey indicated was, you know, potentially a very or a large conductor at the north end of the property. So this is right along a trend of porphyry, either bodies or targets, spanning from our property called the Mer in the northwest. And then you have, you know, our new target, which isn't named, but it sits below a documented high-grade copper showing called the Al. And then further down the trend, you have the Bethsaida zone, which is where Teck has been drilling more porphyry copper or porphyry style copper mineralization that in a new target that appears to be what they're expanding their pit into, which is between our property and their western pit wall, which is just about 2 kilometers of distance between them. So halfway through that, about a kilometer between us, there's an area that they've been drilling, and we know this because they've been filing assessment reports. So we've been able to look at some of the information from that, some of the assay certificates and whatnot. So there's some pretty significant porphyry mineralization there. And then if you continue on that trend, you get the Lornex deposit and the Highmont deposit. So it's a pretty well-defined trend. And right underneath a showing that we knew about that had some shallow drilling done on it in the past, but never any deeper drilling, there is a giant conductor. So it's pretty interesting. It's going to require some more work before it's drill ready, but not a lot of work. You know, we think that a short field program will help flesh it out. So we're planning that right now. Hopefully we get some valid IP data, and then it should be drill ready. And the interesting thing about this anomaly is that, and I'm sure if people have an opportunity to look at our news release from yesterday, they can see this 3D block model that we've built of it, that it's half on our property and half on Teck's property. And another very interesting point of this is that if anybody looks at the dimensions and the placement of it and they think it's deep, they should look at a topographical map of where it's sitted. So it is a little deeper if you consider it as being a flat plane, but it's actually sloping away towards into the valley. So we're on a high point. The Alwin property is actually the height of land in the Highland Valley. It's at about what is it? It's about 1,650 meters, and then everything slopes down into the tailings pond. So that kilometer away anomaly under the owl showing is sloping away. So if there was a deposit there, it's not as daunting as just kind of having to dig down 600 meters. It's really not. Half the mountain's been eroded away already.
Okay, got it. So when you decide to drill this, this MT anomaly, you're going to drill it from the slope of the hill there, and that will allow you to get into the heart of the anomaly without going as deep with the drill. Is that correct?
Well, we'll probably drill a deep hole anyway, just to give it a real test. It's not so much drilling costs. It's more, if you want to think of strip ratio, right? I mean, if there is a deposit there, again, the north half of it is on our ground, or sorry, the south half is on our ground, and the north half would be on our neighbor's ground. It wouldn't, I would guess that it wouldn't be, 500-600 meters of overburden. But yeah, we would look probably at around 700-800 meter holes to target this, to give it a full test, like right through the anomaly.
I see. And there's a paragraph in the news release that talks about some holes that were drilled in 2008, including one that was near the anomaly that tagged into 9.7 meters, grading 0.55% copper. What more can you tell us about that hole and the 2008 program? And do you have core from that drill program that can help you to understand what might have been tagged into there? Why didn't they follow up on that?
Yeah, great question. I'm sorry to cut you off. I know a lot about that program because my dad did it in a different company. So I actually know the geos that designed it. I know the geos that logged the core. I know what their strategy was. And that's quite frankly why I'm involved in the project, because I always liked what they were doing. But if you go back to 2005, 6, 7, 8, when that work was being done, they did not have a geologic model. Okay, they didn't have access to the 60,000 meter drill hole database that GSP was able to get access to. So they were kind of drilling blind, and they were focused on shallow targets. So that's why they did the shallow IP, and those holes that they drilled towards the north of the property. So in particular, hole 0806, which we referenced in the news release, was not designed to test for any porphyry style of mineralization. It was following up on some higher grade kicks in the soil samples and a shallow chargeability anomaly. And so it was, I think, disappointing to them that they didn't hit any shallow veining, which is the style of Alwin proper. And so it never was followed up on for that reason, number one. And number two, the timing was really unfortunate. So, 2008 is the year that I remember well. It was my first year out of college, and, I was working at Salmon Partners, and it was a volatile year in the markets, to say the least. And so when the results of that program came out, obviously the 08, 06 and 07 and 05 were sort of technically interesting holes, not super commercial successes. They did have some good drill results in the Alwin proper, but I remember the news came out, I think it was like September 14th or something, 2008. It might have been the day that Lehman Brothers was liquidated. So it was just the worst timing possible to announce any sort of exploration results, even though the market bounced back relatively quickly in our sector in March of 09. It was a different time. So really no momentum was generated from that program. And the company that my dad had controlled at the time was refocused into Mexico the next year, and they didn't do any more work on the Alwin for 10 years and ran out of assessment credit, and the claims lapsed. So it's really unfortunate, but I know the strategy, and we have the drill logs, and we've been conversing with the geologists that log the core. And what was really interesting was in that hole 0806, and that's why we put in the news release, was at the bottom of the hole, I think they hit 9 meters of 0.45 or something copper, but the alteration style further down the hole. Now, remember, this isn't even a 200 meter long hole, and it was at a shallow angle, so it didn't go that deep. But he, the geologist who logged the core, I mean, he was observing that the alteration style was, changing to more of a potassic alteration with an associated disseminated copper run in it. So, if they were drilling for porphyry at the time and had a different strategy, I'm sure they would have extended that hole another few hundred meters to see. So it's an undrilled target by anybody, and we tried to really make that clear in the news release by plotting all the historic drill holes, not just ours, not just San Marcos, but everything back in the day. So nobody's gotten into this thing, and so I think it's a real opportunity to flesh it out and see what we can see. But we're super excited. I mean, when I first kind of got a glimpse of this, I drove right up there just to see without any geologists last Monday on BC Day, our civic holiday here, to see, you know, how easily could we get a drill there. And, you know, thankfully it's logging road accessible. So there's no, you know, no problems.
Oh, you can drive right up there with the rig and just get set up with a
well, pretty much. Like, I'm, you know, if you look at our map, just even on the front page of our presentation, you can see like a circular road and a fork in the road just off of our property. So right where the G is in the GSP on our title page, there's actually to the west of it or to the left of it, there is a little spur road, and that's basically all been logged up there. And yeah, we walked up it, me and a couple buddies walked up it and picked up some rocks. And anyways, been a good day up there, but you can see that it's prime time location for drilling without any access issues or disturbance or anything like that. So it's a pretty good setup.
Okay, so, and that is interesting that you reemphasize this is an undrilled target, which is extremely rare for the Alwin location, for the Teck Highland Valley location. This is an area that has been very active for mining for more than 50 years. So it's rare to find an area like this that's the sort of virgin ground. And I guess that's because it might have to do with the fact that it appears to be pretty heavily, you know, forested. And then also, as you said, it's higher elevation. So maybe it just wasn't the area that the old timers really, you know, went to first. And as you said, also, the 2008 hole was drilled pretty shallow, and they didn't find what they wanted to see based upon the Alwin mine, and they weren't really, you know, looking for a deeper porphyry, I guess. So that definitely, you know, explains it. So, you know, investors obviously want to know a plan of action. So this is a good target that's shaping up here. What do you need to do next, and what's the timing of a drill program here?
Well, we do need to do a little more groundwork on it, so that's coming up over the next few weeks. We'll have an announcement out on that when it gets started. You know, we do need to go and figure out a little bit more geochemistry in and around the surface of it, and, you know, properly target it. We're also, you know, if we move forward to drilling, which I think we will, we would also like to not only just drill this target, we also have a legitimate porphyry target on the Mer property. And the Mer property isn't part of Alwin, it's not a contiguous claim group, but it's within, I think, 1.5 kilometers. And Mer has had drilling on it, and it has had what was at least documented to be disseminated porphyry copper style mineralization in the 1960s, and actually a number of holes, and this anomaly shows up in all the, you know, provincial geology documents, and they hit some really interesting porphyry numbers. You know, just to list off a couple, you know, there was 24 meters of 0.3 copper from surface, 15 meters of 0.5 copper from surface, 30 meters of 0.5 copper from surface. I'm saying from surface a lot, and these are short intersections, and that's because in the mid 60s they were drilling this with a percussion drill. Like, you know, it was basically looking for high grade, and they were hitting porphyry style when, you know, it was about, unfortunately, probably 2 decades too early for anyone to care about that. So what we've permitted there is approximately 250 meter holes to really just test below these interesting porphyry style hits that have been reported historically. So we want to do all that together, right? Because mobilizing a drill campaign and everything is a bit of an undertaking. So, you know, if we could drill those 2 holes, test our porphyry target, and you know, probably test the strike extension of the Alwin at the same time, that would be an efficient and, you know, I think a well-rounded program. And so that's coming, right? Hopefully within the next 2 to 3 months, you know, we'll see how the targets evolve and how the permitting evolves. We aren't really constrained by season here. I know I assume you follow a lot of Pacific Northwest or even Golden Triangle companies, and there's a huge weather sort of window component to it. What I can say about Highland Valley is this: it's high up, it's 1,600 meters, but it's pretty dry, right? So it can get very cold, but you're not getting big snow drifts like you do elsewhere in the province. It's quite arid. And so we can drill throughout the winter here. We can drill later in the fall. And it's actually been good for us because a lot of times the drillers, they get better rates in October and November when they get all the rigs back from their other projects. So we've been able to get some pretty competitive rates over the past few years. So we're not, I guess we're not in a huge rush to just start it because it's September. But maybe this interview is, I think, a good opportunity to clarify that. We can start in November if we want. We can drill in the winter. It's really not a big deal. It's cold and there's maybe a little bit more fuel consumed, and you got to keep the water lines insulated and heated, but it's not like impossible. And certainly, other companies do it. So we just want to make sure that we really move the needle on the next drill program, right? We don't really want to underwhelm. One of the hallmarks of GSP has been a pretty decent capital structure over 5 years, and obviously, as a non-cash flowing company, you have to sell shares to drill. We just don't want to have to sell too many shares at low levels to drill what we want to drill. So, that's the strategy in a nutshell. I mean, the property's not going anywhere. We own 100% of it now. There's no more. There's no more cash payments. We've secured it, and it's become, no matter what anyone says, its location and the $2.4 billion spend next door has made it of extreme strategic importance. Anybody that says, oh, okay, good luck, wait for 20 years for Teck to buy you. I mean, that's not really how these mine life extensions work. If they're spending $2.4 billion, those plans can change, right? And they can grow, and they probably will. I mean, what kind of a company wouldn't want to maximize value from their primary asset, right? That's just not how it works with sophisticated, diversified miners. So we've become I would argue, a huge strategic importance, whether the market recognizes it today or not. And we are going to be proving that out through further exploration and drilling.
Just a reminder as to the share structure and the company cash and treasury, Simon. How many shares out and who are the largest shareholders of the company, and how much cash do you guys have right now?
Yeah, so there's 46 million out, and the largest shareholders are myself and Richard Billingsley and his wife, and insiders own 25% of the shares right now. Cash, we just raised 500 grand hard dollars, so we have probably 400 left. So all of our upcoming sort of field work is paid for. Drilling would likely necessitate a little bit more money, but I wouldn't get too anxious about that if I was an investor looking today. There are no plans for an imminent financing. We do still have quite a bit of work to do, and I think revaluation catalyst to prove out these targets. But yeah, 46 million out, around 10 cents a share today. And so it's, sub 5 million market cap, pretty cheap. BC Copper is definitely heating up. You can see success in other companies a little further along, Vizsla Copper, Kodiak, American Eagle. These are obviously different scenarios. We're a bit of a special situation, but, I just don't think you can overstate the importance of having, probably the most efficient mining operation in the country, one of the most efficient mines in North America, maybe the world, right next door to us. Like Jordan Trimble's on our board. I think you know him, Robert.
Yeah.
Jordan's got a buddy that worked at Highland Valley, or I think he still works there. He's the drilling and blasting manager at the time in the pit. And he took us down into the pit and just showed us, the autogenous trucks driving around and how they've fine-tuned that operation. It's really impressive. So I just don't think you can ignore that fact that we now have another porphyry target in this prolific district with a very active operator all around us on every side. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. The fact that it's Teck's #1 asset is pretty awesome. Thank you, Simon. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, Robert.